Jake Thompson had always been the kind of guy who fixed computers and never talked much at parties. At 32, he lived in a small apartment in Portland, worked at a tech company downtown, and spent most evenings playing video games or watching old movies. His biggest excitement usually came from getting a new gaming console or finding a good deal on pizza. That Tuesday morning started like any other. Jake dragged himself out of bed, made his usual terrible coffee, and sat down at his kitchen table with his laptop. He was trying to finish some work before heading to the office when he noticed a strange package sitting on his doorstep. He didn't remember ordering anything, but deliveries got mixed up in his building all the time. The box was about the size of a toaster, made of some weird black material that felt warm to the touch. There was no return address, no delivery sticker, nothing. Jake shrugged and brought it inside. Maybe his neighbor had ordered something and it got delivered to the wrong door. He set the mysterious box on his coffee table and forgot about it while he rushed to get ready for work. But when he came home that evening, the box was still there, and now it was making a soft humming sound. Jake had always been curious about electronics, so he carefully opened it up. Inside was what looked like the coolest gaming console he'd ever seen. It was sleek and silver, with no visible buttons or ports. The surface was completely smooth except for a small glowing blue circle in the center. Jake had no idea what brand it was, but it looked expensive and futuristic. He spent the next hour trying to figure out how to turn it on. He tried touching the blue circle, speaking to it, even waving his hands over it like those motion-controlled devices. Nothing worked. Finally, frustrated and tired, Jake decided to make himself some dinner and try again later. He was heating up leftover Chinese food when his elbow knocked over his coffee mug. The hot coffee splashed everywhere, including all over the strange device. Jake panicked and grabbed a towel, but as soon as the coffee hit the blue circle, something incredible happened. The device started flashing and beeping like crazy. Sparks flew from it, and Jake could swear he heard voices speaking in a language he didn't recognize. The whole thing lasted maybe 10 seconds before the device went completely dead. Jake stood there, dripping wet towel in hand, staring at what was probably a very expensive piece of technology he'd just destroyed. He spent the rest of the night trying to clean up the mess and feeling terrible about breaking someone else's property. He planned to put up notices in his building the next day, hoping to find the real owner and apologize, but Jake never got the chance to put up those notices. 3 days later, he woke up not in his bed, but standing in the middle of what looked like a giant crystal cathedral floating in space. Through the transparent walls, he could see stars and planets spinning slowly around them. The floor beneath his feet was made of some kind of glowing material that felt solid, but looked like liquid light. Jake wasn't alone. The enormous space was filled with the most incredible collection of beings he'd ever seen. Even in movies, there were tall, thin creatures that looked like they were made of pure energy, short furry beings with multiple eyes, and things that were so strange Jake couldn't even describe them properly. Some looked almost human, while others were so alien that Jake had to look away to avoid getting dizzy. All of these beings were arranged in circular rows, like a giant amphitheater, and they were all looking at him. Jake stood in the center, wearing his pajamas and feeling completely out of place. He tried to speak, to ask where he was or how he got there, but no sound came out of his mouth. Then a voice spoke, so loud and clear that Jake felt it in his bones rather than heard it with his ears. It came from a massive being of pure golden light that hovered above all the others. Human designated Jake Thompson, the voice said, "You have performed an act of great heroism that saved millions of lives across 17 star systems. The reconnaissance probe of the Zeltron invasion fleet has been neutralized, preventing a catastrophic war." Jake blinked hard, wondering if he was dreaming or having some kind of breakdown. Reconnaissance probe, the only thing he'd broken recently. Was that weird gaming console with his coffee? The Galactic Council recognizes your brave sacrifice, the golden being continued. You willingly destroyed enemy technology at great personal risk, showing the kind of courage that legends are made of. Jake tried to interrupt, to explain that it was just an accident, but the words still wouldn't come. The other beings in the chamber started making sounds that might have been applause, though it sounded more like a combination of chirping, humming, and static. As a reward for your service, the voice announced, "The Council grants you the highest honor we can bestow. You will receive a Valorian companion, trained in combat and survival, to serve as your protector and ally for life." A section of the crystal floor slid away, and a platform rose up carrying a small figure. Jake stared as he got his first look at what was apparently his reward. She was definitely humanoid, but unlike anyone Jake had ever seen, she stood about 4 feet tall, with skin that seemed to shift between blue and silver depending on how the light hit it. Her hair was white and seemed to move on its own, like it was floating underwater. Her eyes were large and violet, and when she looked at him, Jake felt like she was seeing right through him. She wore what looked like armor, but it was so form-fitting. It might have been her actual skin. There were intricate patterns carved or tattooed across her arms and face, and Jake could see that she was incredibly strong despite her small size. Her hands alone looked like they could crush his skull without much effort. "This is Zara of the Valorian people," the golden being explained. "She is a warrior scholar, trained in 17 forms of combat and fluent in over 400 languages. She will serve as your companion and protector." Jake finally found his voice. "Wait, I think there's been a mistake. I'm not a hero. I just spilled coffee on something. I didn't mean to break anything, and I definitely didn't mean to stop an invasion." But the council didn't seem to hear him. Or maybe they just didn't care. The golden being's voice boomed again. "The ceremony is complete. May you both serve the galaxy well." Before Jake could say another word, the world around him started spinning. Colors blurred together, and he felt like he was falling through space. The last thing he saw was Zara's violet eyes watching him with what might have been curiosity, confusion, or maybe just resignation. Then everything went black. When Jake woke up, he was back in his own apartment, lying on his familiar couch. For a moment, he thought it had all been the strangest dream of his life. But then he heard a sound from his kitchen, like metal being carefully taken apart. Jake sat up slowly and looked toward the kitchen. There, sitting cross-legged on his counter, was the small blue-skinned woman from the crystal chamber. She had his microwave completely disassembled in front of her, and she was examining each piece with intense concentration. She looked up when she heard him move, and those violet eyes met his. "Good morning, Jake Thompson," she said in a voice that was surprisingly deep and formal. "I have been studying your primitive food heating device. The technology is fascinating. In its simplicity." Jake stared at her for a long moment, then looked at the pieces of his microwave scattered across his kitchen counter. "You're real," he said finally. "I am," she replied, setting down a piece of what used to be his microwave door. "I am Zara, and I have been assigned to serve as your companion and protector. Though I must admit, I am somewhat confused about why the council believes you require protection from anyone." Jake looked around his small, messy apartment, then back at the alien warrior woman who was apparently going to be living with him. "Yeah," he said weakly, "that makes 2 of us." Jake spent the next hour sitting on his couch, staring at Zara while she continued to take apart his kitchen appliances. She had moved on from the microwave to his coffee maker, and she was examining each component like it contained the secrets of the universe. "So," Jake said finally, "you're an alien." "That is correct," Zara replied without looking up from the coffee maker's internal wiring. "I am from the planet Valor, which was located in the Andromeda sector before its destruction." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. "Destroyed?" "Yes. My homeworld was eliminated by a mining corporation approximately 67 Earth years ago." She said this as casually as someone might mention the weather. "The survivors were scattered across the galaxy. Many of us entered service with various governmental bodies." Jake didn't know what to say to that. He watched as Zara carefully removed the heating element from his coffee maker and held it up to the light. "I'm really sorry about your planet." Zara paused and looked at him with those unsettling violet eyes. "Thank you. That is kind of you to say." She went back to her examination. Your beverage preparation technology is remarkably inefficient. But the basic principles are sound. Right, Jake said slowly. About that. You're taking apart my stuff. I am studying it, Zara corrected. I was told I would be living among humans, but I was given very little information about your culture or technology. I must understand my environment to properly protect you. Jake looked at the scattered pieces of his morning routine spread across his counter. Maybe you could study things without, breaking them. Zara tilted her head in a way that reminded Jake of a confused dog. I have not broken anything. I can reassemble these devices easily. To prove her point, she began putting the coffee maker back together with incredible speed and precision. Within 30 seconds, it looked exactly like it had before she'd taken it apart, okay? That's actually pretty impressive, Jake admitted. But maybe ask next time? I will remember that, Zara said, making a mental note. Your species values permission-seeking behavior. This is useful information. Jake realized this was going to be a very long adjustment period for both of them. The real problem started that night. Jake had assumed Zara would need to sleep. Maybe on the couch or something. He'd even offered to give her his bed and sleep on the couch himself. But when he woke up at 3 in the morning to get some water, he found her standing perfectly still in his living room, staring out the window. Zara? He whispered. Are you okay? She turned toward him, and Jake noticed. Her eyes actually glowed slightly in the dark. I am maintaining watch, she said in her normal voice, which sounded incredibly loud in the quiet apartment. Watch for what? Threats, intruders, unusual activity. She gestured toward the window. Your neighborhood has 17 different potential access points, and your building's security is essentially non-existent. The probability of a hostile encounter is quite high. Jake looked out at his quiet residential street, where the most exciting thing that ever happened was Mrs. Chen's cat getting stuck in a tree. I don't think anyone's going to attack us. You are a high-value target now, Sarah said seriously. The council's decision to honor you will not remain secret for long. There are many who would seek to capture or eliminate you. This was definitely not what Jake had expected when he'd gone to bed. So you're just going to stand there all night? I do not require sleep as your species does, Zara explained. I could rest while maintaining awareness of my surroundings. Jake rubbed his eyes. Okay. But could you maybe do it a little quieter? And maybe not in my living room? Zara considered this. I could position myself in the kitchen area. The sightlines are adequate, and I would not disturb your rest period. That would be great. Thanks. But Jake couldn't get back to sleep. Every time he started to drift off, he'd hear a small sound from the kitchen and remember there was an alien warrior woman in his apartment. When he finally gave up and went to make coffee at 6 in the morning, he found that Zara had reorganized his entire kitchen according to what she called optimal efficiency patterns. All of his dishes were stacked in perfect pyramids. His food was arranged by color and nutritional content. Even his junk drawer had been sorted into precise categories. It looked like a military supply depot. I improved your storage system, Zara announced proudly. Your previous organization method was completely random and highly inefficient. Jake stared at his transformed kitchen. He had to admit it looked amazing. But he had no idea where anything was anymore. Where's my coffee? Beverage stimulants are located in Section A7, marked with blue tape for easy identification. It took Jake 10 minutes to find his coffee, which was now stored in a container labeled Caffeine Delivery System, morning use only. The measuring spoons were in a different section entirely, categorized under Precision Measurement Tools. This is going to take some getting used to, Jake muttered. I can create a reference guide. Zara offered helpfully. With your primitive technology, a simple paper chart should suffice. Jake was starting to understand why the Galactic Council had sent him a protector. He was probably going to need protection from his protector. The real test came when Jake had to go to work. He couldn't exactly explain to his boss that he had an alien living in his apartment now, so he tried to convince Zara to stay home. Absolutely not, she said firmly. My duty is to protect you at all times. I cannot fulfill this obligation if you are in a separate location. But you can't come to work with me, Jake explained. People will ask questions. What sort of questions? Like why I brought a 4-foot-tall blue woman to the office. Zara looked down at herself, then back at Jake. I see the problem. I require disguise. Jake watched in amazement as Zara's skin gradually shifted from blue to a pale human color. Her hair darkened from white to brown, and her eyes changed from violet to a more normal hazel. Even her height seemed to increase slightly, though Jake might have been imagining that. How did you do that? He asked, staring at her. Basic biological adaptation, Zara said, as if this was the most normal thing in the world. All Valorians can alter their appearance to some degree. It is a survival mechanism. That's incredible, Jake said. You look completely human now. I am still learning your species' behavioral patterns, Zara said. You will need to instruct me on proper human social interaction. This turned out to be more challenging than Jake had expected. On the bus to work, Zara sat perfectly straight, stared directly ahead, and didn't move a muscle for the entire 20-minute ride. When other passengers got on, she would track their movements with her eyes like a security camera. Try to relax, Jake whispered to her. You're making people nervous. I am analyzing potential threats, Zara whispered back, though her idea of whispering was still pretty loud. The soccer mom with the baby stroller is not a threat. You cannot be certain of that. At work, Jake introduced Zara as his cousin who was visiting from out of town. She shook hands with everyone using exactly the same pressure and duration. Said it is a pleasure to make your acquaintance to each person in the exact same tone, and spent the entire day sitting perfectly still at an empty desk, watching everyone in the office. Your cousin is kind of weird, Jake's co-worker Dave mentioned during lunch. She hasn't moved in 3 hours. She's from a really small town, Jake said quickly. She's not used to big city life. What town has people who sit that still? Jake scrambled for an answer. It's a meditation community. They practice a lot of stillness. Dave looked skeptical, but he didn't push it. Jake made a mental note to have a serious conversation with Zara about blending in. That evening, Jake sat Zara down for what he hoped would be a helpful discussion about human behavior. But before he could start, she pulled out what looked like a small metal tablet and began reading from it. I have been observing your species throughout the day, she announced. I have compiled a list of human behavioral patterns that I find confusing and would like you to explain. Jake looked at her list. It was 3 pages long. Okay, he said, settling in for what was obviously going to be a very long conversation. Let's start with the first one. Why do humans consume heated bean water multiple times per day when it provides no nutritional value? Jake looked at his coffee mug, then back at Zara. This is going to be harder than I thought. Jake had been living with Zara for 2 weeks when the worst flu of his life hit him like a truck. He woke up one Thursday morning feeling like someone had filled his head with concrete and replaced his throat with sandpaper. Every muscle in his body ached, and just sitting up made him dizzy. I think I'm dying, he croaked as he stumbled to the kitchen, where Zara was doing her usual morning routine of cataloging his food supplies. Zara took one look at him and immediately went into what Jake could only describe as battle mode. Her eyes widened, her posture straightened, and she started moving around the apartment with purpose and speed. You have contracted a biological pathogen, she announced, appearing at his side so fast it startled him. Your body temperature is elevated, your respiratory system is compromised, and your motor functions are impaired. Yeah, it's called the flu, Jake said, then started coughing so hard he had to sit down on the floor. Flu, Zara repeated, as if filing the word away for future use. You will return to your sleeping area immediately. I will handle this. Handle what? It's just a cold. I'll be fine in a few days. But Zara was already moving, gathering supplies. From around the apartment, she helped Jake back to his bed, and he was too weak to argue. Within minutes, she had transformed his bedroom into what looked like a medical facility. She brought him water in a glass that somehow stayed perfectly cold, even though she hadn't put any ice in it. She made him soup that tasted better than anything he'd ever had, using ingredients he was pretty sure he didn't own. And when his fever spiked that evening, she did something that Jake couldn't explain. Zara sat beside his bed and placed her hands on his forehead. Her skin began to glow with a soft blue light, and Jake felt the strangest sensation, like cool water flowing through his veins. The crushing headache that had been pounding behind his eyes for hours just melted away. "What are you doing?" he whispered. "Bioenergy transfer," Zara said simply. "I am helping your immune system fight the infection more efficiently." Jake stared at her. "That's not possible. Your species has very limited understanding of biological energy manipulation," Zara said. "This is basic medical knowledge where I come from." "Where you come from," Jake repeated. "Right? The planet that doesn't exist anymore." For the first time since he met her, Zara's expression changed. The constant alert readiness in her eyes softened, and she looked almost sad. "Valor was a beautiful world," she said quietly. "We had cities that floated in the clouds and oceans that glowed at night. Our people lived for centuries, and we spent our long lives learning and exploring." Jake felt better than he had all day, thanks to whatever Zara had done, so he sat up in bed. "What happened to it?" "The Helix Corporation happened," Zara said, and there was real anger in her voice now. "They wanted the crystals that grew in our planet's core. We tried to negotiate, to find a way to share the resources without destroying our home. But they decided it was easier to just take everything. They destroyed your entire planet for mining. They cracked the planet's crust and extracted the core crystals. The planet became uninhabitable within days. Most of my people died in the evacuation." Zara's hands clenched into fists. The survivors were scattered across the galaxy. Many became servants or soldiers for other species. "We had nowhere else to go." Jake felt sick, and it wasn't from the flu. "How long ago was this?" 67 years. I was young then, barely. Past my first century. I was studying biosciences at our capital university when the attacks began." Zara's voice became distant, like she was remembering something painful. "I had planned to become a healer, to help people. Instead, I became a weapon." "A weapon?" "The Galactic Council recruited many of us after Valor's destruction. They said we could serve the greater good, protect other worlds from suffering the same fate. So I learned to fight. I learned to kill. I spent decades in military service, following orders, protecting council interests." Jake looked at this small, fierce woman who had been taking care of him so gently just moments before. "Is that why you're so formal, so careful about everything?" 50 years of military service teaches you to follow protocol, Zara said. "I have not had a choice in my assignments for a very long time. Until now. The council gave me a choice with this assignment. They said I could refuse if I wanted." Zara looked at him with those violet eyes. "I chose to come here." "Why?" "Because you were described as the first human to show genuine heroism in the face of an alien threat. The council said you willingly sacrificed valuable technology to prevent an invasion." Zara tilted her head. "But you are not a warrior. You are not a leader. You are just a person." Jake laughed, which turned into another coughing fit. "Yeah, I'm definitely just a person. A very ordinary person who accidentally spilled coffee on something. Yet you saved 17 star systems. I really didn't mean to." "Intent matters less than results," Zara said. "But I find myself wondering why the council really sent me here. In all my years of service, I have never been assigned to protect someone who appeared to need so little protection." Jake was starting to feel drowsy again, but something was nagging at him. "Have you noticed anything weird since you got here?" "Weird how?" "I don't know. My electronics have been acting up. My computer keeps glitching. Sometimes I have these really vivid dreams about space and alien worlds." Jake rubbed his eyes. "I keep thinking about that device I broke. It felt warm when I touched it, and when the coffee hit it, I swear I heard voices." Zara went very still. "What kind of voices?" "I couldn't understand them, but they sounded angry, scared, maybe." Jake looked at her. "You think that's important? I think you should rest," Zara said, but Jake could see she was thinking hard about something. "Your body needs time to recover." "Zara, what aren't you telling me?" "Sleep." "Jake, we can discuss this when you are well." But Jake was already drifting off, and his dreams were full of alien worlds and strange voices calling his name. When he woke up the next morning, he felt completely better. Not just better from the flu, but better than he had felt in months. He had more energy than usual, and his mind felt sharper, clearer. He found Zara in the kitchen, but she wasn't organizing his food or taking apart his appliances. She was standing at the window, looking out at the street with an expression Jake had never seen on her face before. She looked worried. "Good morning," Jake said. "I feel amazing. Whatever you did last night, it worked." "Jake," Zara said without turning around. "We need to talk about what? About why your electronic devices have been malfunctioning. About why you have been dreaming of places you have never been. And about why I am detecting energy readings from you that should not exist in humans." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. "What kind of energy readings?" Zara finally turned to face him, and her expression was deadly serious. "The kind that make you incredibly valuable to certain people. The kind that got my planet destroyed." Jake stared at her. "What are you saying?" "I am saying that spilling coffee on that device may have done more than just break it. It may have changed you in ways we do not yet understand. And if I am right, then we are both in more danger than either of us realized." Jake looked around his ordinary apartment, at his ordinary life, and wondered how everything had gotten so complicated. "What do? We figure out exactly what happened to you," Zara said, "and we do it quickly, because if the wrong people find out about this, your coffee accident might end up destroying more than just one planet." Jake didn't have to wait long to find out what Zara meant about being in danger. 3 days after their conversation, he was getting ready for work when something smashed through his living room window. The object was about the size of a baseball, but it was glowing red and making a high-pitched whining sound. Jake stared at it for a second, confused, before Zara tackled him to the ground. "Stay down," she shouted, her skin already shifting back to its natural blue color as she dropped her human disguise. "Scanner drone." The red object sprouted tiny metal legs and started crawling around Jake's apartment, beeping as it went. Everywhere it went, the beeping got faster and louder. When it crawled near Jake, the beeping became almost frantic. "What's it doing?" Jake whispered from behind his overturned couch. "Scanning for energy signatures," Zara said grimly, "which means they know you're here." "They who?" Before Zara could answer, Jake's front door exploded inward. 3 figures in dark armor rushed into the apartment, carrying weapons that looked like they belonged in a science fiction movie. Their faces were hidden behind helmets, but Jake could tell they weren't human just from the way they moved. "Target confirmed," one of them said in a voice that sounded like it was coming through a radio. "High-level psychic energy detected. Begin extraction." "Over my dead body," Zara snarled, and Jake watched in amazement as she launched herself at the nearest intruder. What happened next was like watching a movie, except it was happening in Jake's living room and destroying all his furniture. Zara moved faster than Jake thought possible, dodging energy blasts and hitting the armored figures with enough force to dent their metal suits. But there were 3 of them, and they had advanced weapons. Jake watched helplessly as Zara fought, until one of the intruders pointed his weapon directly at her back. "Zara, look out!" Jake screamed. Something incredible happened. Jake felt a surge of energy rush through his body, like electricity, but warmer. The apartment lights flickered, his television turned on by itself, and a wave of invisible force exploded out from where he was hiding. All 3 intruders were knocked backward, their weapons sparking and smoking. One of them hit the wall so hard he left a dent in the plaster. The scanner drone simply stopped working and fell to the floor like a dead bug. Zara spun around to stare at Jake, her eyes wide. "Did you just do that?" "I don't know," Jake said. Honestly, he felt dizzy and his hands were shaking. "I don't know what I did." The intruders were getting back to their feet, but their equipment was clearly damaged. One of them spoke into a device on his wrist. "Extraction failed. Target has active abilities. Requesting backup." "We need to leave," Zara said, grabbing Jake's arm. "Now." They ran down the fire escape and into the alley behind Jake's building. Zara led him through a maze of back streets until they reached a small park several blocks away. Only then did she stop and turn to face him. "Jake," she said seriously, I need you to tell me everything about what happened when you broke that device, every detail you can remember. Jake sat down on a park bench, his head spinning. I told you already. I spilled coffee on it. It started sparking and making noise. Then it died. The noise. What did it sound like? Like voices, speaking in a language I didn't understand. They sounded panicked, maybe scared. Jake looked at her. Why is that important? Because that device wasn't a gaming console, Zara said. It was a reconnaissance probe from the Zeltron invasion fleet. When you spilled coffee on it, you didn't just break it. You sent feedback through its communication system that disabled their entire fleet. That's impossible. Not if you're a natural. Psychic, Zara sat down beside him. Some humans are born with latent psychic abilities. Most never develop them. But sometimes, contact with alien technology can trigger those abilities. Jake stared at her. Are you saying I'm psychic? I'm saying you have abilities that most humans don't. The energy surge that knocked down those intruders. The electronic malfunctions you've been experiencing. The dreams about alien worlds. It all fits the pattern. But I'm just a regular guy. I fix computers and play video games. The most powerful psychics are often the most ordinary people, Zara said. That's why the council sent me to protect you. They knew this might happen. Jake felt like his whole world was tilting sideways. Wait, you knew. You knew this whole time? I suspected, Zara admitted, but I was ordered to let you discover your abilities naturally. The council believed it would be safer that way. Safer than what? Than what just happened. Forced awakening of psychic abilities can be dangerous or even fatal. But now that your powers are active, you're in incredible danger. Jake looked around the park, suddenly feeling like everyone might be watching him. From who? From people who want to use your abilities for their own purposes. From governments that want to weaponize you. From corporations that want to harvest your psychic energy. Sarah's voice got darker. From the same company that destroyed my planet. The Helix Corporation. They specialize in extracting and selling psychic energy. It's incredibly valuable as a power source for advanced technology. A human with your level of natural ability would be worth millions to them. Jake felt sick. So what do? We figure out how to control your abilities before someone else decides to control you. Zara stood up and started walking toward the park's exit. But first, we need to get somewhere safe. Those weren't the only bounty hunters looking for you. As they walked, Jake noticed that streetlights were flickering as he passed under them. A car alarm went off for no reason. Someone's phone started playing music randomly. Is that me doing that? He asked. Your emotions are affecting your control, Zara explained. Fear, anger, excitement. They all make your abilities stronger but less stable. We need to work on that. They spent the rest of the day moving from place to place, staying in public areas where it would be harder for anyone to attack them. Zara taught Jake basic meditation techniques to help him stay calm and control his abilities. The key is not to fight it, she explained as they sat in a busy coffee shop. Your psychic energy is part of you now. Fighting it is like trying to hold your breath forever. Eventually, it has to come out. So I just accept that I'm some kind of freak? You're not a freak, Zara said firmly. You're evolved. Most species develop psychic abilities eventually. Humans are just doing it faster than usual. Jake stirred his coffee and watched the spoon bend slightly from the pressure of his grip. What happens if I can't control it? Then very bad people will control it for you, Zara said. But that's not going to happen. I won't let it. Why? Jake asked. Why do you care so much about protecting me? Zara was quiet for a long moment. Because for the first time in 50 years, I'm not just following orders. I'm choosing to protect someone I actually care about. Jake looked at her, really looked at her, not as the alien warrior who had been assigned to him, but as the person who had stayed awake all night when he was sick, who had shared her painful memories with him, who was risking her life to keep him safe. I care about you too, he said quietly. Good, Zara said, and for the first time since he met her, she smiled. Because we're going to need to trust each other completely for what comes next. What comes next? We find the people who sent those bounty hunters, Zara said, and her smile turned dangerous. and we make sure they never bother you again. Jake felt his abilities pulse with energy, responding to his emotions. But this time, instead of fear, he felt something else: determination. For the first time since this whole crazy situation started, he felt ready to fight back. Okay, he said, let's do it. Jake and Zara didn't have to wait long to find their enemies. The next morning, Jake woke up in the cheap motel room they'd rented to find the sky outside glowing an unnatural green color. Zara, he said, shaking her awake, something's wrong. She was instantly alert, rolling out of bed and moving to the window. Extraction field. She said grimly, they're not trying to capture you anymore. They're trying to drain your psychic energy directly. Jake looked out at the city skyline. A massive ship hung in the air above downtown Portland, so big it cast a shadow over several blocks. Green beams of light were shooting down from it, and wherever they touched, Jake could see people collapsing on the streets. They're hurting. Innocent people, Jake said, feeling his abilities start to respond to his anger. The motel room's television turned on by itself, showing news coverage of the mysterious ship. The Helix Corporation doesn't care about innocent people, Sarah said. They're using the city's population as a power source to fuel their extraction equipment. The more energy they drain, the stronger their weapons become. Jake watched in horror as the news showed hospitals filling up with unconscious people. Children were crying for parents who wouldn't wake up. The whole city was in chaos. We have to stop them, Jake said. We can't fight a ship that size, Zara replied. They have enough firepower to level the entire city. So what do? We get close enough for you to use your abilities directly against their systems, Zara said. But Jake, using that much power could kill you, and even if it doesn't, the corporation will never stop hunting you. Jake looked at the ship hovering over the city. Then at Zara. What about you? What happens to you if we do this? Zara's expression became troubled. There's something I haven't told you. When the council assigned me to protect you, they installed a control device in my brain. If your psychic abilities ever become too strong, I'm programmed to eliminate you. Jake stared at her. You're supposed to kill me? The device activates automatically when it detects certain power levels. I won't have a choice. Zara's hands were shaking slightly. But Jake, I've been fighting the programming for days now. Every time you use your abilities, I feel it trying to take control. Then we can't do this. Jake said immediately, I won't put you in that position. Those people down there don't have a choice, Zara said, pointing toward the city. Children are dying because of your abilities, because of what you represent to the corporation. Jake felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. All his life, he'd been ordinary, unremarkable, someone who never had to make decisions that affected other people. Now thousands of lives depended on what he chose to do. There has to be another way, he said. There is, Zara said quietly. I can disable the control device, but it will be extremely painful, and I might not survive the process. No, Jake said firmly. We find a different solution. But even as he spoke, Jake could feel his abilities responding to his emotions. The motel room's lights were flickering, and he could hear electronic devices turning on and off throughout the building. Your power is growing, Zara observed. The more people who suffer, the stronger your emotional response becomes. And the stronger your emotions, the more powerful your abilities. Jake closed his eyes and tried to center himself, using the meditation techniques Zara had taught him. But every time he started to calm down, he'd think about the innocent people lying unconscious in the streets. And his anger would flare up again. I can't control it, he said. Every time I try to stay calm, I think about what they're doing to the city. Then don't try to control it, Zara said. Use it. But the device in your head will activate whether we want it to or not, Zara interrupted. Your abilities are already approaching the threshold. In a few minutes, I'll be forced to attack you regardless of what we decide. Jake looked at her, this small, fierce woman who had become the most important person in his life. What if we destroy the device first? It's connected to my central nervous system. Removing it incorrectly could leave me brain dead. Zara moved closer to him. But if you're willing to try, I trust you. I'm not a doctor. I don't know anything about alien technology. You don't need to know about technology, Zara said. You need to know about energy. The device runs on electrical impulses. Your psychic abilities can disrupt electrical systems. Jake felt a chill of fear. What if I hurt you? Then you hurt me, Zara said simply. But if you don't try, I'll be forced to hurt you in a few minutes anyway. Jake looked out at the city, then back at Zara. Okay, tell me what to do. Place your hands on my head. Focus on finding the device. It will feel different from my natural brain activity. Then send a very controlled pulse of energy to disrupt. Just at one system, Jake placed his hands on either side of Zara's head, feeling the warmth of her skin and the strange energy that seemed to flow through all Valorians. He closed his eyes and tried to sense the electrical activity in her brain. At first, all he could feel was the natural rhythm of her thoughts and emotions. But then he found it, a cold, mechanical presence that felt completely wrong, like a piece of ice in a warm room. I can feel it, he said. Be very careful, Zara warned. Too much energy and you'll damage my brain. Too little and the device will remain active. Jake took a deep breath and sent the smallest pulse of psychic energy he could manage directly. At the foreign device, Zara gasped and her body went rigid. Did it work? Jake asked. I don't know, Zara said. We'll find out when your abilities reach the activation threshold. They didn't have to wait long. The ship outside was draining more energy from the city, and Jake could feel his powers responding to the suffering of thousands of people. The motel room's electrical systems were going crazy, and Jake could sense his abilities approaching levels he'd never experienced before. Zara watched him carefully, and Jake could see her fighting some kind of internal battle. Her hands twitched toward the weapon she kept hidden under her jacket. Zara, Jake said. The device is still trying to activate, she said through gritted teeth. But I can fight it now. You damaged it enough to give me a choice. Then let's make this choice together, Jake said. How do we stop that ship? We get close enough for you to overload their extraction systems. Zara said. But Jake, you'll be using more power than any human has ever channeled. It could burn out your brain. Jake looked out at the city again, at the green beams of light stealing the life from innocent people, better than letting them die because I was too scared to try. Then we do this together, Zara said. But first, you need to know something else. The Council didn't just send me to protect you. They sent me because Valorians are naturally immune to psychic energy. I can be near you when you use your full power. Without being affected, you mean you can keep me grounded. I can keep you alive, Zara said. Your abilities are strong enough to save the city, but they're also strong enough to kill you. I can absorb the excess energy and keep you from burning out. Jake felt a surge of hope. So we both might survive this? We both might survive this, Zara agreed. But we have to trust each other completely. I trust you, Jake said without hesitation. You're the first person who's ever made me feel like I could be something more than ordinary. You were never ordinary, Zara said. You just needed someone to help you see it. They made their way to the roof of the motel, where they could get a clear view of the corporation ship. Jake could feel his abilities building like a storm inside him, responding to his determination to save the city. Remember, Zara said, taking his hand, focus on the ship's extraction systems. Overload them all at once. Jake nodded and reached out with his mind, feeling for the electrical systems aboard the massive vessel. He found them, dozens of powerful machines designed to steal psychic energy from living beings. Now, Zara said, Jake let his abilities explode outward with more force than he'd ever used before. The energy surge was so powerful that every electronic device in the city flickered. But instead of burning him out, he felt Zara's presence beside him, absorbing the excess energy and keeping him stable. The ship's extraction beams wavered and died. Its engine sputtered and went silent. And then, slowly, the massive vessel began to fall toward the river outside the city. It's working, Jake said, amazed that he was still conscious. It's more than working, Zara said, squeezing his hand. Look. Jake looked around and saw that his psychic energy wasn't just destroying the ship, it was healing the people who had been drained. All across the city, people were waking up, sitting up, calling out for their families. "How is that possible?" Jake asked. "Because you're not just powerful," Zara said. "You're good. Your abilities respond to your desire to help people, not hurt them." As the ship crashed harmlessly into the river, Jake felt his abilities finally settle into a controlled, steady flow. For the first time since this whole adventure began, he felt like he was in control of his own power. "So what happens now?" he asked. "Now we decide what kind of life we want to build together," Zara said. "The council will want to relocate us somewhere safe, but we can choose where we go and what we do."